They say funerals bring families together. Not mine. The invitation came in the mail like a slap I didn't see coming. No return address, just my name, written in that hard, angular handwriting I hadn't seen in years. I almost tossed it, thought it was another legal ad or maybe a credit card scam. But something about the way my name was written made me stop, made me open it. Inside was a funeral program. James A. Moore, beloved father, veteran community leader. My breath caught. Not because I was grieving exactly, but because even now, the man who never called me back, never once visited, never apologized for what he said when I needed him most, had found a way to land a punch. I hadn't spoken to anyone in the Moore family for a decade. Not since I left Charleston for good me, a battered 24-year-old single mom with a suitcase of baby clothes, a newborn in the car seat, and a bruised cheek I couldn't explain to the neighbors. I remember the last thing he said to me standing on that porch with Caleb in my arms. "You made your bed." That was it. His send-off. No hug, no help. Just shame wrapped in Southern manners. I drove away that night without looking back. Since then, I'd built a life for myself in Savannah. Quiet, small, safe. Caleb and I read books at night, listened to birds in the morning. I worked at the library. He drew on every spare napkin he could find. It was far from glamorous, but it was ours. And for the most part, I'd buried the past. Or at least I thought I had. Until that letter came. I sat at the kitchen table, holding it like it might burn a hole through my hands. Caleb noticed. He always noticed. At 10, he had a way of reading rooms like adults forgot how to. "You okay, Mom?" I cleared my throat, still staring at the envelope. "It's from Charleston." He didn't ask who, didn't have to. "You gonna go?" I didn't answer. I was too busy sorting through the mess of emotions this stirred up confusion, resentment, some weird flicker of curiosity. Mostly I was numb. And then somewhere underneath that, a tiny ember of something else. Closure, maybe. I told myself I'd just go to be polite, sit in the back where Black stays silent, then disappear again. But the moment Caleb and I stepped into the chapel, I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Everything smelled like dust and lilies, polished pews, old stained glass, the kind of place that remembered your secrets and whispered them behind your back. Heads turned the second we entered. Whispers rose like steam. I heard my name barely under someone's breath. That's when I saw Lindsay, my father's pride and joy, and Mark, who used to tell me to be quieter at the dinner table because my laugh was too loud. Lindsay looked me over like I'd tracked mud on her rug. "Well," she said with a smirk, "the prodigal daughter returns." Mark didn't even try to hide his laugh. My spine straightened. I didn't flinch, just nodded slightly and walked past them. Their words didn't matter. Not really. I hadn't come for them. I came because despite everything I needed to know what kind of man my father had chosen to be at the end. If he died the same way he lived pretending I didn't exist. We took a seat in the back row. Caleb slipped his hand into mine and I realized mine was shaking. I whispered, "We're just here to sit. That's all." But deep down I already knew it wasn't going to be that easy. Not with this family. Not with this history. Not when my name was finally going to be said out loud. The funeral ended with all the polish and restraint you'd expect from a Southern family that values image over intimacy. Polite prayers, stiff nods, not a word about me. After the service, the family moved from the chapel to the old house for what they called a light gathering. I hadn't planned on going. I really hadn't. But Caleb looked up at me as we walked out and asked, "Can we go for a little while just to see?" So we did. The Moore family home hadn't changed. Still those towering white columns and that suffocating ivy climbing up the brick like it was trying to smother the place. The inside smelled like lemon polish and fading judgment. I should have turned around the second I stepped into the foyer. Lindsay was already holding court in the parlour, glass of white wine in hand, laughing too loudly at a joke that probably wasn't funny. Mark stood near the fireplace, one arm draped over the mantel like he was posing for a campaign photo. When they saw me, their expressions didn't shift, but their energy did. The kind of subtle shift you feel in your bones before your brain catches up. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Mark said, pushing off the mantle. "Still love that dramatic flair," Rachel Lindsay added, turning slightly to face me. "Arriving like some mysterious stranger. You should have sent a postcard." I ignored them and took a seat near the window with Caleb, who sat close, sensing the storm under the surface. I told myself I could just sit there for 15 minutes, smile if anyone made eye contact, then sneak out the side door like I was never there. But life had other plans. A few minutes later, Uncle Ray Dad's older brother stood and cleared his throat. "Before anyone leaves, we'd like to gather in the study for a short family discussion." I looked up. A family meeting, of course. I hadn't been in that study since I was 17. Back then, I was crying on the leather couch while my father told me to stop acting like a victim. That memory clung to the room like stale smoke. Everyone filed in. Lindsay and Mark sat on either side of the large desk already in position. A few cousins hovered in the back. I stayed near the door with Caleb, still unsure why I hadn't left yet. Uncle Ray took centre stage. Now that the service is over, he began, "It's time to discuss the estate." Lindsay nodded, taking over like she was running a board meeting. Dad made it clear years ago that Mark and I would handle everything. The house, the land, the accounts. Obviously, we've all made peace with that. I felt Caleb glance up at me, but I didn't move. Lindsay went on. "That said, we'd prefer to avoid any confusion or complications today. We know Rachel's here, and while it's touching that she came all this way, we assume she understands where things stand." Mark added Dad hadn't mentioned Rachel in a will or legal document in over a decade. A few people nodded. That old familiar feeling crept in again, like I was being erased in real time. Like I'd imagined the years I spent surviving while they pretended I didn't exist. I stood there, calm on the outside, a riot on the inside. Then Lindsay leaned forward, voice soft but venomous. "So Rachel, for everyone's peace of mind, can you confirm you're not here to contest anything?" The room went still. I felt my chest tighten. My face stayed still, but inside the question rolled over me like a wave. Was I here to make peace, or was I finally ready to stop letting them write me out? "I didn't come to cause trouble," I said carefully, "but I'm not here to be steamrolled either." Lindsay blinked. Mark's smirk slipped just slightly. "I came to say goodbye," I added. "But if you think I'm going to sign anything or confirm anything before I've even seen a page of paper, you don't know me as well as you think." The silence was sharp. Uncle Ray cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Now, let's not make this confrontational." "I'm not," I said, "but don't mistake quiet for weak." Lindsay huffed and looked away, muttering something about playing victim. I sat back down, hands tight in my lap. My pulse was pounding, but my voice hadn't cracked. That felt like a win. Caleb leaned toward me, whispering, "You okay?" I nodded. "I'm okay." But what I didn't say was this: I was done shrinking. 2 days after the funeral, I was still at the house. Not by choice, but because the lawyer hadn't arrived yet, and Uncle Ray insisted proper closure required the family to be present for the reading of the will. I could have left, should have, but something told me not to. On the outside, the house was calm porch swings, creaking iced tea, sweating on coasters. But on the inside, the Moore family was fracturing in slow, passive-aggressive motion. Everywhere I turned, there were whispers behind doors, wine poured just a little too loudly, and glances that lingered a second too long. Like I was something contagious or dangerous. By day 3, it was clear I wasn't just being tolerated, I was being watched. That morning I went to grab my travel bag from the guest room, only to find it open, half the contents on the floor. At first, I thought Caleb had gone through it, but he was still asleep. Then I saw the zipper pulled off like someone had forced it open in a hurry, and my wallet missing. I found it 20 minutes later in the downstairs bathroom, tucked behind the toilet tank, cash gone, ID removed. I knew what this was. Not theft. A message. I stormed into the kitchen where Lindsay and Mark were casually sipping coffee at the island, like two snakes sunning themselves on granite. "You went through my bag?" I demanded. Lindsay didn't even blink. "I don't know what you're talking about." Mark set down his mug slowly. If you're missing something, maybe you misplaced it. You always were scattered. Try that again, I said, voice sharper now. Only this time say it to my face. Lindsay sighed. Rachel, if you're looking for someone to blame for your paranoia, maybe look in the mirror. You've been unstable for years. Everyone knows it. The words hit harder than I wanted them to. That word unstable was weaponized like a slur in this family. A catch-all for inconvenient woman. I know you took the money, I said, and you can pretend all you want, but I'm not here to be pushed around by the two of you anymore. Mark stood slow and condescending. You're a guest here. Maybe you should remember that before running your mouth. I'm not a guest, I said, taking a step closer. This was my home too. He laughed once short and mean. Not anymore. That's when Caleb entered the room, barefoot, rubbing his eyes. Mom, he asked, what's going on? My voice softened. It's fine, baby. Go get dressed. But before he could move, Mark muttered, poor kid, growing up in the middle of your mess. I froze. Something cracked open in me. Not just hurt, not just anger. The breaking point. You don't get to talk about my son, I said, voice shaking now. Why not, Mark said. You brought him here, didn't you, playing the role of long-lost martyr. But this isn't your story anymore, Rachel. We're just trying to clean up the loose ends before the lawyer gets here. And that's when I realized something. They were nervous. Not annoyed, not just cruel. Nervous. The next few hours confirmed why. I overheard Lindsay on the phone in the den pacing with a glass of rosé in hand. I don't care what the will says, she snapped. It won't hold. We have the medical notes. If we push the narrative hard enough, no court will honour it. That word again? Narrative. It clicked like a snapped bone falling back into place. They hadn't just been whispering because they hated me. They were trying to get ahead of something. A few hours later, I confronted Uncle Ray in the sunroom. Why are we really waiting for the lawyer, I asked. He hesitated too long, then said, there's been a delay with the paperwork. Nothing to worry about. Is there a will? His eyes flickered. I deserve to know. Rachel, let's just say your father made some late decisions that we don't all agree with. That's when the front door opened. Thomas Dawson stepped inside, briefcase in hand expression unreadable. I believe you've all been waiting for me. The family gathered fast, like sharks smelling blood. Lindsay sat with one leg crossed over the other, polished and poised. Mark looked smug. Uncle Ray stood off to the side, quiet now. Dawson placed a small cedar box on the table, then the briefcase beside it. I have a video to show first, he said, at Mr. Moore's instruction. Lindsay rolled her eyes. Can't we just get to the reading? Dawson didn't flinch. He placed the USB into the TV and pressed play. My father appeared on screen, older, thinner eyes shadowed. If Rachel is watching this, he began, I owe you the apology I never gave. You could have heard a pin drop. I was wrong, he continued. I judged you for leaving pain instead of staying loyal to it. And when you sent money through Gerald, I knew it was you. I just didn't have the courage to say it. Lindsay stood up. Turn it off. This is ridiculous. Dawson raised a hand. Sit down. The will reading followed. To me, the house, the land, $250,000 in savings. To Caleb, a 6-figure college trust. To Mark and Lindsay, a box of family photos and a broken compass. Lindsay gasped like she'd been slapped. This is fraud. She manipulated him. You did that all on your own, I said calmly. This won't hold, Mark shouted. We'll challenge it. Dawson didn't blink. The will was notarized, witnessed and filed 2 years ago. All legal. That's when I stood. And it wasn't just to gloat. It was to reclaim. I walked to the centre of the room. I don't want your pity, I said. I don't even want your respect. But I will no longer let you erase me. I turned to Caleb. Let's go home. As we walked toward the door, Lindsay hissed, You think you won. You're nothing but a footnote. I turned back just once. No, I said, I'm the author. Then I left. We didn't speak on the drive back. Not because there was nothing to say, but because too much had already been said. Caleb sat beside me, sketchpad balanced on his knees, quietly tracing the outline of a hawk's wing. He didn't ask what had happened, though I knew he understood it better than most adults in that house. His silence was a kind of grace, a kind I hadn't been given in years. When we got back to the small Savannah apartment we called home, I didn't unpack. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off, watching dusk stretch across the window blinds. My phone buzzed. Lindsay. Of course. I let it ring out, then checked the voicemail. She hadn't even waited for the beep. "Congratulations," she spat. "You think you won something, Rachel? You didn't earn a damn thing. He was sick. You got into his head same way you manipulate everyone. Don't get comfortable in that house. You'll always be an outsider." Delete. 2 minutes later, another message, this time from Mark. "You better lawyer up. I don't care how clean that will looks, we're not letting you walk away with everything." Delete. They were spiraling, lashing out the way people do when power slips through their fingers like sand. But even knowing that my chest ached, they weren't just strangers, they were family, my blood, my memories. My mother's laugh used to live in that house too. And for a second, just a second, I felt the old guilt creep in. The guilt they'd planted in me years ago watered every time they reminded me I wasn't stable, not more enough, not grateful. But that guilt wasn't mine anymore. The next morning I brewed coffee and started a list. 1. Call the estate attorney. 2. Schedule property transfer paperwork. 3. Meet with Caleb's school counsellor about the college trust. There was no celebration, no shopping spree or champagne toast. Just a woman with a pen and a plan, rebuilding something that had never been offered in the first place. A home. 2 days later I went back to Charleston. Not to deal with Lindsay or Mark, but to walk through the house again alone. Caleb was with Jules, my best friend, and the closest thing to family I'd had in years. She didn't ask 100 questions when I dropped him off, just hugged me tight and said, "Take your time." The Moore house was quieter now. No guests, no glances, no clinking wine glasses behind passive-aggressive digs. I walked through each room slowly, paused in the kitchen where my mother used to hum while she peeled peaches. The pantry still smelled faintly like cinnamon and mothballs. In the den I found the old reading chair beneath the bay window, the one my father used to call his thinking spot. I sat in it, let it creak beneath my weight. I didn't cry. I just breathed. Later that day I got a message from Lindsay. This one was short. "Lindsay, you don't deserve that house. Don't expect to be welcome at anything moving forward." I stared at the screen for a while, then typed back, I was never welcome to begin with, but I'm home now, that's enough." I didn't expect a reply, I didn't need one. Weeks passed. Papers were signed, keys changed hands. I moved slowly at first, just enough boxes to fill the living room and Caleb's bedroom. I didn't rush to redecorate. I let the house breathe again. Jules came by one weekend with coffee and flowers. "Is it weird?" she asked, glancing around. "Being here after everything?" "Yes," I admitted, "but less weird than pretending I don't belong." She nodded, then added with a grin, "About time you took up space, Rach." And I did take up space. Not just in the house, but in my own life. I began sketching plans to open a non-profit from the old study, something for women starting over. A place to get legal support, housing referrals, trauma counselling. I didn't know how long it would take or what I'd need to make it work, but I knew the first thing I wanted to hang on the wall, a photo of my younger self holding baby Caleb in that tiny Savannah apartment with the caption, "She built it anyway." Because I did. Not just a life, but a foundation. Not just a comeback, but a legacy. One night I was sitting on the back porch, Caleb asleep inside, when I saw a car I didn't recognise pull up to the curb. For a split second I braced myself another confrontation, but it wasn't Lindsay or Mark. It was Uncle Ray. He stood at the gate, hat in hand, like a man unsure of the ground beneath him. I met him halfway. "I shouldn't have stayed silent," he said. "I knew about the changes in the will. I didn't agree with how your father treated you. I just didn't want to take sides." "You did," I said. "You just didn't say it out loud." He winced, nodded. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it." I didn't forgive him, not yet, but I didn't shut the gate either. We stood there for a while, just breathing the night air. Then I said, "You want to come in?" He nodded once, almost shy. "Just for a minute," he said. Later that night, I wrote in my journal something I hadn't done in years. There's something strange about being chosen after a lifetime of being overlooked. It doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like returning to the earth after a long exile and finding it hasn't forgotten how to hold you. My name is on the deed now, but more than that, it's in the story. Finally. and no one gets to erase it again. 12 full months since the funeral, the will, the fallout. Since I stood in the middle of my father's living room and watched a family unravel. And somehow here I was still standing. No, not just standing. Thriving. The Charleston house was no longer just his. It had become ours, mine, and Caleb's. The garden bloomed again. I painted the walls room by room, replacing the stiff, neutral colours with warm shades of terracotta and sea glass. Every inch slowly transformed from a monument to someone else's control into a space full of breathlight and choice. Caleb had claimed the sunroom as his studio. He called it the nest because, in his words, this is where things grow. I didn't argue. It was fitting. His sketches now covered the refrigerator, the hallway walls, and every spare inch of his bedroom door. Mostly birds, owls, hawks, herons, free things. As for me, I kept building too. The non-profit I'd dreamed of quietly came to life, Second Flight Foundation. We opened in a donated storefront downtown, offering small grants, legal advice, and trauma-informed counselling for women leaving toxic relationships. We were small, scrappy, but real. Some days were hard, some stories cracked me wide open, but it was honest work, healing work. And every woman who stepped through our door reminded me why I did it in the first place. Because I knew what it felt like to leave with nothing, and I knew what it took to rebuild from that place. One warm Saturday morning, I stood on the back porch, coffee in hand, watching Caleb chase fireflies barefoot across the lawn. The old wind chimes sang soft above my head. Somewhere inside, music played low, Joni Mitchell maybe. I felt something in that moment I hadn't in years. Peace. Not just the absence of chaos, but actual wholehearted peace. A life that didn't require apology. A home that didn't hide bruises under rugs or silence behind polite smiles. No ghosts, just memory and meaning. And when I felt tears rise, they weren't the kind I had to bite back or swallow down. They were gentle, cleansing. I let them fall. I never heard from Lindsay again. Last I heard, she moved to Florida and filed a lawsuit that didn't go anywhere. Mark sent one email 6 months after the will was read. Just one line. If you ever feel guilty, remember what you stole. I didn't respond, because I hadn't stolen anything. What I had was earned, through silence, through sacrifice, through surviving. It had taken me years to understand the difference between taking space and taking revenge. I wasn't trying to hurt them. I was trying to exist on my own terms. Not long after that email, I ran into Uncle Ray again, this time at a fundraiser for a local food bank. He wore a navy suit and looked 10 pounds lighter, like something heavy had been shed. He walked over, held out a check to Second Flight without a word. I raised my eyebrows. Consider it back pay, he said. I didn't hug him, but I shook his hand, and for once the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, just honest. Some things I never got back. I would never get the childhood I lost, or the years spent trying to please people who only saw me when I broke the rules they wrote. But I gained something better. Self-respect. It didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, in moments, in the steady refusal to be small again. To be the quiet daughter, the accommodating sister, the bruised woman who begged for scraps of kindness. That version of me was gone, buried in the same soil as my father. And in her place stood someone who no longer feared her own voice. One morning I stood at the top of the front steps with a list in hand, permits to renew insurance forms, to sign curriculum, to finalise for the Foundation's next support group. Caleb leaned out the door behind me and said, "You know what I was thinking?" I turned. "What?" "This house looks like it forgave you." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," he said, shrugging. "Just looks softer now, like it's happy you're here." I swallowed hard. Maybe he was right. A few weeks later, I opened a letter from the county clerk's office confirming full title transfer of the house into my name. There was no ceremony, just a thick white envelope and a signature line. But when I signed it, I felt something break open inside me, like a promise I'd made to myself finally got honoured. I didn't light a candle or say a prayer. I just walked through every room and whispered 2 words over and over: "Thank you." Not to the past, but to the version of me that kept going when it would have been easier to stay gone. If you asked me now what I learned from all of it, from the funeral, the will, the betrayal, the reckoning, I'd say this: love isn't loyalty. Family isn't ownership. And silence isn't peace. The people who hurt you may never apologize. The ones who dismissed you may never change, but you can. And that's where the power is, not in forcing them to see your worth, but in never needing their permission again. 1 year to the day after I first opened that envelope with my name on it, I opened another. A plain card from one of the women in our program. Single mother, 3 kids. Had left her husband after 10 years of silence and fear. Inside the card was a photo of her smiling in front of her new apartment, keys in hand. The note said, "You gave me the courage to stay gone. Thank you." I held the card against my chest and smiled, because somehow in the ashes of what broke me, I had built something that helped others rise too. So no, there was no perfect ending, no fairy tale reunion, no applause. But I didn't need any of that. I had a porch that faced the morning sun. I had Caleb's laughter filling the hallways. And I had my own name spoken with pride, written into a will, carved into something lasting. Not forgotten, not erased, just finally fully seen. And that was more than enough. Story 2. I'm Maya, 32, married to Daniel, 33. We've been together for 6 years and have a 4-year-old son, Leo. Our relationship with Daniel's family has always been complicated. They're deeply religious, while Daniel and I are more secular. They believe I'm the reason Daniel drifted from his faith, even though his beliefs changed long before we met. Initially, our interactions were strained, but things improved after Leo was born. My mother-in-law warmed up to me, and we found common ground in our love for Leo. My father-in-law remained neutral, respectful, and uninvolved in family drama. However, Daniel's sister, Olivia, 40, remained distant. Olivia has a 5-year-old daughter, Sophie. 2 years ago, Olivia's marriage ended after she was caught having an affair with her husband's best friend. During the tumultuous period that followed, I offered to look after Sophie while Olivia sorted out her life. Leo and Sophie, being close in age, bonded quickly. When Olivia resumed full-time custody of Sophie, the little girl was upset about leaving our home. Olivia misinterpreted this as Sophie preferring me over her, leading to accusations that I was trying to steal her daughter. Daniel defended me, emphasizing that we were only trying to help. Olivia distanced herself from us, but unbeknownst to her Sophie's father, Mark would bring her over on weekends so the kids could play together. Eventually, Olivia found out, and after some family intervention, agreed to let the children spend time together again. For the past 2 years, things seemed to have settled. The kids enjoyed each other's company, and Olivia appeared to have moved past her resentment. That illusion shattered last week. Daniel was out of town for work, and I was home alone with Leo. I fell ill with a fever and nausea, leaving me bedridden. It was Sophie's turn to visit us, but I couldn't manage 2 kids in my condition. I called Olivia to cancel, explaining my situation. Surprisingly, she offered to take Leo for the day, suggesting a trip to the local adventure park with Sophie, followed by a sleepover at her place. Grateful for her kindness, I agreed. Olivia picked up Leo around noon. I reminded her of his severe peanut allergy, and she assured me she'd be careful. Trusting her, I went back to bed. Around 5 p.m, I received a frantic call from Sophie crying and saying, "Mum said it's a little prank, but Leo isn't waking up." Panic surged through me. I called emergency services and rushed to the park. At the hospital, Leo was covered in hives, his face swollen. The doctors administered treatment and kept him under observation. When questioned about his allergy, I explained his peanut allergy and that he was under Olivia's care. Olivia denied giving him anything with peanuts. Then Sophie, through tears, revealed that Olivia had given Leo a peanut butter sandwich despite Sophie's protests. Olivia had insisted it was a harmless prank. I was furious. I confronted Olivia, who dismissed Sophie's account, claiming I was overreacting. I called Mark, explaining the situation. He arrived promptly, and Sophie clung to him, expressing fear of her mother. Olivia tried to downplay the incident, but Mark and I were unconvinced. Later, Mark informed me that Olivia admitted to giving Leo the sandwich, saying she didn't know why she did it. He recorded the confession and shared it with me. Olivia's actions were deliberate and malicious. Daniel returned home the next day, distraught. We decided to report Olivia to Child Protective Services, CPS, concerned for Sophie's safety. CPS intervened and Sophie was placed under Mark's custody. Olivia's motive became clear. She was using child support payments for her own benefit. Leo recovered physically, but the emotional scars lingered. Sophie began therapy to cope with the trauma. Olivia attempted to contact us, but we blocked her. Daniel and I focused on healing our family and supporting Sophie through this difficult time. Leo came home the next afternoon. He was sleepy, groggy, but otherwise okay. The doctors said the reaction had been caught just in time. Another hour, maybe 2, and we might have lost him. I watched him sleep that evening. Every now and then he twitched. Kids do that sometimes, but every flinch made my chest tighten. The fear hadn't left my body yet. It stayed in my skin, behind my eyes. Daniel got home the next morning. He walked through the front door and didn't say a word at first, just pulled me in and held on tight. I didn't realize how much I needed that hug until my knees gave a little. We didn't talk much until Leo was asleep again. Then we sat at the kitchen table with cups of cold tea we'd forgotten to drink. Did she admit it, he asked. I nodded. Mark got it on tape. Daniel stared into the mug, and she said she didn't know why she did it, she just did, and she didn't take him to the hospital because she said she couldn't afford it. He blinked, slow. She tried to kill our son because she didn't want to pay a hospital bill. I didn't answer. There wasn't a right way to say it. He stood up and walked to the window. That's not just a mistake, that's evil. I'd tried not to say it out loud, but now hearing him say it, I felt the weight of the truth settle. She's dangerous, he said. I don't care that she's my sister. I don't care that she cried afterward. If we let this slide, we're giving her permission to do it again. He turned to me, his voice low and steady. Next time it could be someone else's kid, or Sophie. That name brought me back. Rachel Sophie had been holding it together, but I could still see the fear in her eyes. Not the loud kind. The quiet kind that sits behind smiles. The kind you learn to hide when you grow up in a house where love feels like a test you'll always fail. That night Daniel called Mark again. He asked how Sophie was doing. Mark said she hadn't spoken much, but she'd drawn a picture of Leo and her holding hands in the park. Above them, a peanut butter sandwich crossed out in red. At the bottom she'd written, I told Mommy no. I broke down when he said that. She'd tried so hard to protect Leo, and now she was carrying all this weight, thinking she could have done more. She's 5, I whispered. Which means we've got to step in, Daniel said. The next day we called CPS. We told them what happened, everything. That Olivia knew about Leo's allergy, that Sophie had tried to stop her, that Olivia admitted it but didn't act because of money, that Sophie was terrified of going home. They asked questions, took notes, promised to follow up. We didn't expect much. These things take time. But 2 days later they knocked on Olivia's door. She didn't take it well. She texted me, raging, accusing, unhinged. I knew it was you. I should have let the damn kid choke. I showed Daniel the message. He stared at the screen, then picked up his phone and called her. I didn't hear everything he said, but I saw the way his shoulders tensed, the way his jaw locked, and I heard the last part clear as day. You'll never see my son again, and if you come near Sophie, we'll make sure the law steps in before you can blink. After that she went quiet, but it wasn't over. Daniel's parents finally got involved after Olivia called them, crying and spinning her version of the story. They came over the next evening, confused, emotional, asking for the full picture. I showed them the recording. They listened, didn't say much. When it ended, my mother-in-law looked down. She's still our daughter, she whispered. Daniel didn't flinch. And Leo's your grandson. She tried to kill him. I don't think she meant to. She did it, Daniel said. There's no thinking, there's proof. His father didn't argue. He looked older than I remembered him. Tired, maybe ashamed. I didn't want to believe it, he said, but there's no denying what's on that tape. They left after that. Didn't apologise. Didn't defend her either. Just walked out heads low. And honestly, that was enough. CPS placed Sophie with Mark temporarily. It became permanent within the month. Turns out Olivia wasn't just careless. She was financially unstable, emotionally volatile, and had been using the child support money to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. She fought the custody change, not because she missed her daughter, but because she missed the money. Sophie started therapy. Leo went back to preschool. Slowly the days became quieter. Every Friday Sophie comes over after school. She and Leo build pillow forts and race through the backyard. Some nights she curls up on the couch next to me and just sits. No words. Just the soft presence of a child who's learning how to breathe again. She drew me another picture last week, me, her and Leo holding hands, a house in the background, the sun smiling down. At the top she'd written "Safe now. Spring came late this year." The wind was still cool in the mornings and the magnolias hadn't bloomed yet. But the days stretched longer, softer. There was space again for breath, for peace. Sophie had started calling our house her second home. Every Friday after school, she walked in like she belonged. Took her shoes off by the door, dropped her backpack with a thud, and went straight to Leo's room to see what world they'd build that day. Pirate ships, dinosaur caves, secret forts. Some days she stayed for dinner. Some days she asked to sleep over. Mark always said yes. He was careful about everything now, but when it came to us, he trusted. I didn't ask for that trust. I just held it gently when he gave it. Sophie was healing little by little. Her nightmares didn't come as often. She laughed more now, loud, open, belly-deep laughs that only kids can make. But sometimes I'd find her sitting still, thumb tracing the corner of a drawing eyes far away. She never talked about Olivia. We didn't ask. Mark said Olivia had tried to contact her through school once. The principal called him right away. Nothing came of it. Mark considered a restraining order, but decided to wait and see. Sophie wasn't ready to confront that part of her story yet, and for now that was okay. Leo didn't remember much about what had happened. He asked questions now and then, why he couldn't eat peanut butter, why Aunt Olivia didn't visit anymore, but the weight of it hadn't settled into his bones. Not like it had for Sophie, and we were grateful for that. We kept his world simple, safe. One evening I watched the two of them build a cardboard spaceship in the living room. They were arguing over whether it should have wings or jet thrusters. Sophie said wings make it prettier. Leo said jets make it faster. I sat back and smiled. That argument meant the world was okay again. Daniel and I started taking walks after dinner. Sometimes we didn't talk, just walked side by side, feeling the rhythm of our steps match. Sometimes he'd bring up his work. Sometimes I'd talk about the non-profit I was thinking of starting, something for mothers like me, women who stepped in when others stepped out. He always listened. "Whatever you decide," he said one night as we stood under the porch light, "I'll help build it." That meant more than he knew. Not because I needed his permission, but because we'd survived something hard, and we were still here, still walking forward, together. Olivia tried to reach out once more, through Daniel's mother this time. A message passed like a whisper. She's sorry. She wasn't herself. Maybe she could explain. Daniel didn't answer. I didn't need him to. The silence said everything. We weren't cruel. We just weren't willing to reopen doors that led to fire. My mother always said some people are rivers and some are flames. You can touch the fire, but only once. After that, you learn. We had learned. One Sunday, Sophie asked if she could plant flowers in our backyard. She said she wanted something that would grow in the same spot every year. Something that comes back, she said. We let her choose. She picked daffodils, said they looked like little sunshines. Leo agreed mostly because the name sounded funny. The three of us dug into the earth with bare hands, pulled weeds, turned soil, planted bulbs in neat little rows. Sophie patted the last one gently and whispered, You're safe here." I don't think she meant the flower. The days got warmer, softer still. Life didn't go back to how it was before, but maybe that was the point. We didn't need to forget to move forward. We just needed to carry what mattered. Sophie, Leo, family not the kind we were born into, but the kind we chose, the kind we protected. Sometimes at night, I'd sit on the porch with Daniel while the kids played inside, and I'd let the quiet settle over me like a blanket. And I'd think this is what healing looks like. Not loud, not sudden, but steady. Like a river carving a new path. Final thought. Some people asked why I didn't press charges, why I didn't go after Olivia harder, why I let her fade into the distance instead of dragging her into court. I used to think justice meant punishment. Now I know it sometimes means protection. For Leo, for Sophie. And for me, we didn't need revenge, we needed peace. And now we had it. The flowers in our yard bloom every year now. They come back stronger each spring. So do we. Story 3. I'm Emily, and my story isn't unique, but it's mine. I grew up in a comfortable suburban home, the kind with a white picket fence and a golden retriever. My dad, a self-made businessman, often reminded us of the value of hard work. Everything we have is because I earned it. He'd say, not unkindly, but firmly. My cousin Lily was more like a sister. Just a year younger, she was the daughter of my dad's younger brother, Uncle Mike. Our families were close, celebrating holidays and vacations together. Lily and I shared dreams of attending college together, living in adjacent apartments and raising our kids side by side. When college time came, my dad generously offered to pay for both our educations. "Both my girls deserve the best," he declared at our joint graduation party. I was grateful, but perhaps I took his generosity for granted. Post-college, I landed a decent job in marketing. Eager to gain independence, I approached my dad about assistance with a down payment for an apartment. His response was curt. "You're earning now, time to stand on your own 2 feet." I was taken aback, but accepted his decision. A year later, Lily announced her engagement to her college sweetheart, Jake. I was thrilled for her and took my role as maid of honor seriously. The wedding was beautiful, filled with joy and laughter. During the reception, my dad stood to give a speech. He spoke warmly about Lily, referring to her as a daughter. Then he presented her with an envelope containing the deed to a $50,000 apartment. The room erupted in applause. I sat there stunned. The same man who told me to be independent had gifted my cousin an apartment. 3 days later, I confronted my parents. My dad justified his actions, saying Lily and Jake came from less privileged backgrounds and needed the help. "It's my money, Emily," he said. "I choose how to spend it." My mum sided with him, accusing me of jealousy. The conversation escalated and I left their house, vowing not to return. Over the next 5 years, I focused on my career and built a life without my parents. I met Daniel, a kind and understanding man, and we got engaged. Planning our wedding, I decided not to invite my parents. Word got back to them. My dad called, expressing hurt over not being included. I asked if he planned to gift me an apartment like he did for Lily. He hesitated, then offered $5,000. I declined. Shortly after, he posted on social media, accusing me of being ungrateful and demanding. The comments were harsh, painting me as the villain. I responded with a post detailing the disparities in treatment between Lily and me over the years. The fallout was immediate. Family members took sides. Some supported me, others criticized me. Lily sent a message accusing me of being bitter and jealous. I blocked her. Then Uncle Mike reached out. He had taken a DNA test, suspecting something was amiss. The results confirmed that my dad was Lily's biological father. The affair between my dad and Aunt Sarah had been ongoing for years. My mum, upon learning the truth, filed for divorce. She apologized to me, acknowledging her failure to see the signs. She gave me the settlement money from the divorce, insisting I use it to buy a home. Daniel and I purchased a beautiful apartment, and Uncle Mike walked me down the aisle at our wedding. My mum was there, supportive and loving. As for my dad and Aunt Sarah, they married shortly after. Most of the family distanced themselves from them. Lily and I haven't spoken since. Life has a way of revealing truths, even painful ones. But with those truths came freedom and the chance to build a life rooted in honesty and love. The days after my father's call were quiet, but not peaceful. You know how certain storms don't come with thunder, just silence and a heaviness that settles in the bones. That's what those days felt like. Daniel tried to take my mind off it. We busied ourselves with wedding plans, laughed about the colour of napkins, debated the merits of a string quartet versus a jazz trio. But the moment I was alone, that old ache returned, the one where a daughter wonders why she wasn't enough. I thought I'd buried that part of me 5 years ago. Turns out it had just been waiting for air. Then came the post, my dad's public attempt to flip the story. He accused me of greed, of blackmail, of trying to extort an apartment from him before the wedding. He wrote things like, I raised my daughter better than this, and I gave her everything, and this is the thanks I get. And the worst part, people believed him. Aunts, cousins, old family friends, they chimed in with their 2 cents. Ungrateful, entitled, spoiled. For a while I said nothing. I just read the comments one after another like cuts from the same blade. Until I couldn't take it anymore. I opened my laptop, took a breath, and wrote the truth. I didn't write it to defend myself. I wrote it for the girl I used to be, the one who smiled through birthdays, where Lily got the bigger gift. The one who watched her cousin receive kindness she was told she hadn't earned. The one who finally said enough. I told them about the college payments, about the birthday trips, about Lily's wedding gift. I laid it all out, not with anger, but with clarity. Then in the final paragraph I said something I never thought I'd write. Sometimes I wonder if Lily is really just my cousin, or if she's something more. A secret none of us were supposed to name out loud. I hit post. And then I waited. The family group chats exploded. My mum called screaming. Dad called raging. Lily sent me a message filled with insults and condescension. It didn't matter. The damage was done, but not in the way they thought. See, truth doesn't destroy. It just unmasks what was already crumbling. That's when Uncle Mike came to my door. I hadn't seen him in years, but I recognized that hollow look in his eyes, like someone who's lost something but hasn't figured out what to grieve yet. He sat down on my couch, hands shaking. He didn't offer excuses, didn't soften what he was about to say. I ran a DNA test, he said. I had to know. He pulled out an envelope. Inside were the results. Lily wasn't his biological daughter. My father was... The air left my lungs, and for a moment it felt like we were both just sitting in the wreckage of 2 lives, his and mine, broken by the same man. He told me more about the early years of his marriage, how Dad was always around, how Sarah, his wife, was always closer to my father than seemed right. But he'd trusted them, trusted family. 25 years of betrayal hidden beneath smiles and holidays and shared jokes at the dinner table. I remember sitting there listening, but it felt like I was floating somewhere outside my body, watching myself nod while the truth rearranged everything I thought I knew. After Uncle Mike left, I didn't sleep. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Lily, my cousin, my childhood best friend, my sister in everything but blood. And now, maybe not even that. I wanted to be angry at her. I wanted to scream. But instead, all I felt was sadness. She hadn't asked for this any more than I had. She'd just been handed a different version of the lie. The next morning, Mom texted me, "Meet me at the cafe in an hour, please." I went. She looked tired, like someone who'd just learned the ground beneath her feet wasn't real. She said she'd filed for divorce, that Uncle Mike had told her everything. I think I always knew, she whispered, eyes brimming with tears, but I didn't want to see it. And when you brought it up, I thought you were trying to destroy us. I'm so sorry, Emily. I should have stood by you. I didn't say anything for a long time, just sat there holding my mother's hand while the truth hung in the air between us. She said she wanted to help, not with words, but with something concrete. Your dad gave Lily a home, she said. He owes you that much, and I won't let him have the final word. That afternoon, she gave me a check for $200,000, her full divorce settlement. Use it for your future, she said. Let's build something better from the pieces they left behind. I didn't cry then, not until later, not until I was alone holding that check like it was a lifeline. Not because of the money, but because someone had finally said, "You matter too." The day my father showed up on my doorstep, fists clenched and voice raised, I didn't flinch. "You've ruined everything," he shouted, barging in before I could stop him. "You think you're better than me." I didn't answer. "You humiliated me. You embarrassed your family in front of the world." "No," I said quietly, "you did that all by yourself." He kept ranting, pacing, throwing blame like confetti. When he paused for breath, I looked him in the eyes. "You're not invited to my wedding," I said, "and you're not part of my life." He stared at me, shocked. Then he said the words he thought would break me. "You're no daughter of mine." I smiled just a little. "That's the first honest thing you've said in years." I opened the door and waited. Eventually he left, and I shut the door behind him this time for good. Spring came late that year. Or maybe I just noticed it more, how the light lingered a little longer in the afternoons, how the breeze didn't bite like it used to. Everything felt different, not because the world had changed, but because I had. The wedding was simple, not small, but intentional. Every guest, every song, every flower felt chosen, not just bought. We didn't rent a ballroom or hire a planner. We got married under an old oak tree in a local garden, the same one Daniel and I had walked through on our first date. My mum was there standing tall, smiling with her whole face. She wore a navy blue dress and cried quietly when I slipped into mine. "You look like the person you were always meant to be," she whispered. That meant more to me than any blessing. Uncle Mike walked me down the aisle. He looked nervous at first, his tie, a little crooked hands, slightly shaking. But the moment our eyes met, everything settled. He didn't say much, just squeezed my hand before we started walking. "You deserve this," he said, "all of it." The path was lined with white chairs, filled only with people who had stayed when the dust settled. No Lily, no Dad, no pretending. Just the family that remained once the truth rose to the surface and the rest drifted away. Daniel looked at me like he always had from the beginning, like he saw all the broken pieces and still believed they made something worth loving. We exchanged vows, we wrote ourselves, and when we kissed, I felt something shift inside me. Not like a door opening, but like the weight of one closing softly behind me. Quiet, final. Later that evening, my mum handed me an envelope. "Your name's on the deed now," she said, referring to the apartment Daniel and I had just moved into. "It's yours, all of it." I tried to protest, but she shook her head. "This isn't repayment," she said. "This is repair." I didn't argue again. I just hugged her long and hard. Lily never reached out, not after the wedding, not after the DNA results. She married Jake in a quiet ceremony 6 months later. I only knew because someone tagged her in a photo on Facebook, a white dress, a beach somewhere warm, and a caption that read, "Some beginnings are built on strength, others on silence." She'd blocked me by then. I guess that was her way of saying she didn't want to face what was left behind. Dad married Aunt Sarah shortly after both divorces were finalised. From what I heard, not many attended the wedding. He tried to reach out again once. A text. "You made your point. I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. Sometimes healing doesn't come in grand moments or sweeping forgiveness. Sometimes it's as small as making coffee in your own kitchen without wondering if you're loved. Sometimes it's folding laundry with someone who chooses you again and again. Sometimes it's the absence of pain that teaches you peace. Daniel and I settled into life like two trees growing toward the same sun-rooted, steady patient. We adopted a rescue dog, a sleepy mutt named Gus, who snores like a chainsaw and loves belly rubs. We hung paintings on the walls slowly, one by one, choosing things that made us feel something. The apartment became a home not because it was perfect, but because it held laughter, warmth, and space for truth. One quiet Sunday afternoon, Uncle Mike came over for dinner. After we ate, we sat on the balcony, watching the sky dim. The air smelled like rain, and the wind carried the kind of stillness that usually comes before thunder. "I still think about her, he said, "about all those years." "I know," I said. He nodded. "Do you hate her?" I took a long sip of tea, then shook my head. "No. I just stopped expecting her to love me the way I loved her. That's the hardest part, I think, not hate, but letting go of the story you told yourself." Uncle Mike looked down at his hands. "You've always been stronger than anyone gave you credit for." I didn't say anything, but I felt it. Mum visits often now. She always brings something, a book she wants me to read, a dessert she tried, baking an apology tucked into the folds of every conversation. I don't need the apologies anymore, but I let her give them. It's her way of healing too. Sometimes we talk about Dad. Most times we don't. It's not about bitterness, it's just some names carry too much noise. Last week, Daniel and I stood on the balcony watching the city lights flicker below us. He wrapped his arms around me and asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" I didn't answer right away. The wind shifted, brushing hair across my face. "I don't think I need to," I said. "Forgiveness means letting go of the anger, but I'm not angry anymore. I just don't care. That's its own kind of freedom." He kissed my temple and didn't push the conversation further. Some things are better left in the silence between two people who understand each other. Final thought. The story didn't end with revenge. It didn't end with me getting back at anyone or reclaiming a throne I was never meant to sit on. It ended with peace. Not loud, not dramatic, just the kind that settles in your chest when you realize you don't need anyone's permission to be whole. I walk through my home and see photographs that hold joy instead of performance. I hear laughter in the walls and feel love that doesn't come with conditions. That's the family I built. The one I chose. And every morning I wake up in this home, I whisper to myself, "This is enough, and I am enough."